This podcast is supported by Patreon, where subscribers get episodes early, ad-free, and completely unedited. This episode actually does have a bunch of edits. Otherwise, the unedited version is on Patreon. So if you want to support this very independent podcast, go to patreon.com/Charalanazard.
I was just watching a video of yours. I was just watching your
Baldur's Gate.
Zalavir video, yeah.
I'm not going to read the comments on that one. I just read a couple. But I was like, I'm sure I'm going to make people very mad with this. And I expected to lose a bunch of subscribers because usually whenever I take like a stance that's pro-dev, I will lose a bunch of subscribers. Obviously, I keep doing it anyway. But I actually haven't. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I think you struck a decent balance. I would probably go further and stronger in my opinions than you did. So fair play.
Yeah, I try to do that a lot, you know? And I also have both perspectives, so I get it.
Exactly.
It's a tough one, and it's just like my biggest takeaway from the whole Baldur's Gate 3 controversy really is that from everybody, it sucks that the response is not, damn, you guys made a great game. I'm contributing to that here, obviously, but it just must feel so shitty for Larian that everyone is like arguing about if it's possible to make a game that good, or like this. I think people are also assuming their budget is higher than it was. And they just made a really, really, really good game, and it's like I wish that were a more interesting talking point. But
I might have missed. I had a shared thing that something you said in the video that matches my experience. I might have just missed a bunch of tweets because from what I've not seen, whatever the dev saying terrible things was. Never crossed I never saw that. Like neither. I saw what I thought from Zalavir was a thread where there were a couple of sentences that you can see how they could be taken out of context. If someone willfully wanted to make, off video, you could absolutely do that.
But he still is ultimately just sharing an insider perspective. It's not. I don't think it's not that objectionable. I suspect there may have been some deleted tweets. From some devs, that's what it sounds like. But then some people will like, just look at the tweets that were in the IGN video, and I was like, those aren't people being negative about Baldur's Gate 3.
And that's honestly that's what annoys me. Choosing my words very carefully because I don't want to get drawn into this. Although I know I was the one who started this conversation. I would love it if people didn't misrepresent people's statements with a bad faith take.
The headline
what they've said
of the IGN video, I don't think is accurate at all.
I think it's wrong on like 5 levels.
Yeah.
What was it again? Yeah.
It's something like
AAA
developers are panicking.
Not AAA developer.
No,
he's panicking.
Not panicking at all. He was just trying to like give people information.
There's enough hatred and anger on the internet. I don't see why you manufacture it. I really don't.
No, and now it's generated headlines because they're so appealing that are along the lines of like devs mad at quality video game, and like who? Like again, I'm
for our audience. I know our audience is smart, but like when someone shows you a quick succession of screenshots of tweets, do what Alanah did and pause them and actually read them.
There are only 2.
And decide for yourself if the thing is saying what people are telling you it says.
I know Destin quite well, and again, really like Destin. I had a very good experience working with Destin. And I understand everything he said. There are things that I think are like obviously valid for paying customers to be mad at in the games industry right now, and that shouldn't not be spoken about because it's negative. Like,
of course not.
I'm still allowed to criticize game developers, the toxicities where it gets out of hand, but I still think it's fair. But one thing that I always did at IGN and would always encourage people to do is just when you're a journalist, never say people are saying. You have to show me where they said it. It's probably like my biggest editing note is like, if you write or say the sentence as a journalist, people are saying this. Delete the take completely unless you can give me an exact source or an exact screenshot of them saying it. At best,
you're being lazy. At worst, it's dangerous because you're creating. Whenever I see, and this is true of so many things in like any media that you consume, like whenever I can tell that the thing I'm reading or watching is trying to make me angry I immediately go, well, wait a minute, there's value in me being angry. Let's check the sources.
So
Let's
much
check what's
fucking
being said.
like
Everything's
again, the IGN thing. I
it's why
don't
we
know
talk
that
about it.
Destin was trying to do that, and I would think he wasn't sourcing it. Like I would give him his at best was he was giving an impassioned take, and that wasn't priority. That is what his at best is. But there's so much shit on YouTube. It just drives me so nuts of people who know nothing about game development speaking about it as though they know everything and trying to monetize your anger because it works for Fox News. Like we know that there's a ton of money in an audience being pissed off because then you're emotionally engaged and invested. Like there's so much money in it that they want you to be mad so bad. Like I want
our games press to be better than that. That's all I want. And
I agree. The YouTubers
standard we fell short of there.
Yeah, the games journalism should I would have approached it again. I think Destin is well within his rights to make that, and I understand where he's coming from.
Sure.
I would have approached that if I were writing that article as, okay, why is this happening? And use my position as media to interview a bunch of devs, which is what Destin's response was, I think, today. That he's heard a bunch of the feedback and he was like, I'm going to reach out to people. Obviously, I understand if people don't want to talk to me now. But if any dev wants to talk to me about AAA game dev, then I would love to. And it's also just there's a really tough thing about talking about video games, especially when you work at IGN, but I have this all the time too, is I often feel like people don't actually want to hear the truth. They want to hear what will make them mad.
They really don't. Like, and I've seen it in the comments on our videos before, like people saying, oh, it's so cool that you guys talk and it would be great if more devs were open about dev. This is what happens. Someone speaks in a slightly unguarded way for 10 tweets.
Yeah, and he like I know that guy, right? Like
Salavir is the best fucking guy.
He's so lovely, and
he's my guy, which is why I got a little bit angry about the whole thing.
And he's handled it so well. Like he's such a like. I find him to be extremely like positive. Happy, really funny person. I don't know if we spoke about it, but he had a game get banned from the Nintendo
He's also
store.
Occasionally really fucking stupid. And
it's so
he
funny.
knows that I feel this. And that was a good example.
The game got banned from the Nintendo store, or at least wasn't allowed to publish, because he had made a bunch of stupid jokes implying that it was full of child gambling. It's not. But because he basically was just making these like... And our game is definitely not full of child gambling jokes. The game wasn't published. He's a good dude who I suspect, like, I think everybody here has made a mistake. I'm sure I have in my video too.
We've
it's
all
a complicated
done it. Like,
topic.
we've all been. You must have been a couple of headlines by this point.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah,
definitely. I have.
I suspect that he didn't realize how big that tweet was going to get. And is used to the audience he has, and that's a really tough thing about Twitter.
And that's a really challenging thing, right? Is that, like, developers hang out in space in social media just like anyone else does, and unfortunately, if you're not guarded, if you're not careful, if you're not thinking about how something could be misread, if someone willfully wants to misread it
by people you don't even know, like, and it is a thing that you have to think about, and
it leads to that kind of slow kind of caging up where developers. You learn to just not say stuff in public, which ultimately the audience, I think, suffers for it. Yeah.
Like, I do feel like people often don't want the truth, right? Like, and that's a really bad thing that I think has happened to the relationship between journalist devs and the audience is when I sit down to make a video, I would say, like, anytime I make a video like that, which I'm trying to do slightly more, where it's like a feature or like a commentary about news drama, I will often have to edit out myself saying the sentence, I know you don't want to hear this. Like, I say it so often that I know I'm just saying it for myself. It's like, it doesn't need to be in the video. It doesn't help.
You're giving yourself permission to say the thing you're saying.
I just say it all the time that I'm like, I know you don't want to hear this. I know that the take that the YouTube wants to hear, the mass YouTube audience wants to hear is dev, lazy, and bad. And I know that, and that is often not the truth. But it's sometimes what they want to hear.
To be fair, sometimes it is.
And that's the thing where I was
when
like,
it is true, no one can spot it because of all the times they've been lied to.
Yes, it's like a boy who cried wolf. That's the thing that I think I did mess up in my video, was like I didn't address that there literally are lazy devs, or like I have friends who work at studios who've spoken about like terrible management, and that is the dev
Oh,
causing the problem, and that happens all the time. It's like, okay, that's the thing that I should have mentioned where I've misspoken. Happens all the time, but it's just a really tough landscape where things have generated clicks now for anger at devs, and I so badly wish the anger was directed at better causes. And like, there's a part of that video that I edited out, that's easier to talk about here, where I was like, well, I don't want to put any of the onus on players to feel like they have to answer to the industry's mistakes. But none of the squabble matters to the publisher. They don't care. They don't care about any of your mad tweets. Ooh.
people that you as a game player actually should be annoyed at don't use social media.
No, they don't care
They're
at
nowhere near
all.
it. No,
they don't care about anything you're saying. And like, they're like, yeah, Destin, speak up to him. They don't give a fuck about what Destin's saying. The way to actually make a difference, and this is a problem that even I have as a consumer, that like, if I left dev tomorrow, I'd be doing the same thing, is to stop spending money. But publishers know they will. Like, the people who complain about FIFA every year, about it not changing enough, still buy FIFA every year. And the publisher knows you're going to buy it every year. So why would they care about what you say on Twitter? It's effectively cyberbullying. I'm like, stop pre-ordering stuff. Sorry. Like, except for Bithell Games.
Don't listen to Alanah. She's gone, what that? Bithell Games and Sony first-party games should always be pre-ordered.
Everything else, not so much.
We saved it.
We'll also allow any Austin Wintory property. Otherwise, but also ask for refunds. If you don't like something, don't keep playing it. And I think that's the thing that's happened with a lot of the Diablo controversy, is like, they know you're still going to fucking put hours into that game and spend money on it. So why? It doesn't matter. Nothing you say matters at all. And again, I don't want to put onus on players to fix what is a capitalism problem. Like, it is a publisher issue that people don't get enough time or don't have enough budget to execute on their plans. That's the way it is. But the only way to actually punish the publishers and make a change to the system is to stop spending money, or to take your money back when you have spent it, and to stop just buying the same stuff that you complain about. But publishers know gamers are going to do it. It's not gamers' fault.
It's something that's always existed. Like, it's the oldest trick in the book. Actually, powerful people don't play the game. They step back from the game and they let everyone else fight it out. If you're angry somewhat about anything, be it a game, be it an issue, whatever, someone is profiting off your anger unless you're careful about where you direct that anger. And so getting angry at an indie developer, getting angry at any developer, getting angry at anyone who you are aware of or who you have access to on Twitter, and being mean to that person is not going to solve anything. It's not going to get the thing you want changed. And if anything, the people who are actually responsible for whatever it is in games that you don't like, those people, as you said, Lana, they're nowhere nearby, and they actually benefit from you focusing your anger on someone they could easily fire, and then you say they're brilliant for doing so. Like, it's so insidious, and it's a loop that if you've been in the industry long enough, you just see it happen over and over again. And the actually bad people just continue to be bad behind the scenes, in the shadows, in a way that's
so bad. Like, I don't really know what the solution is. Like, I think probably the most disagreeable thing that I would have said to gamers in that video is, yes, I think you should have higher standards. I don't think they will often matter. Like, I think you can have as high standards as you want, and I love video games and think we should expect the best from video games because it's such a fucking awesome medium, and we can create so much cool stuff, and there are so many benefits to video games that don't exist in other entertainment mediums. But me having high expectations of Platinum Games is probably my favorite developer. They just shut down a game because it performed so poorly. Like, they still have like such a good track record of games that I love, and they still made one that effectively was terrible, and they kind of knew it was terrible. It's like, my expectations can be through the roof as it is with them. It just doesn't change anything. And you can complain when things don't meet your expectations. that game got
And to
shut
be
down.
clear, you should complain.
Also
you
agree.
should say I don't like this game. You should say that publicly. You should talk about it. The problem is when it comes to when it's people rather than product. Product you can be disappointed in and dislike
Oh,
and
totally.
attack a product even. Feel free, like leave a bad review, do whatever.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've also not
it's
seen
when it crosses
anybody
people.
harassing any of the. I don't doubt it exists, but I actually haven't seen any of that either. I haven't seen anyone harassing any of the devs who've spoken about this on the internet. Because at least like Destin's video, he's not naming anyone.
I mean, he puts up people's names on screen when he's talking, to be clear. Sorry.
Yeah. But he's not saying, fuck this person. Putting names up on screen is something... we want him to do that, though. That's him sourcing. We want him to source the things he's talking about.
And then misquoting the source. Anyway, we won't go there.
He did misquote
he misquoted the sources. But no, it's. I think. I like to believe, and I hope this is true. I've not talked to Zalvir about this. I should. I will. I suspect a lot of people see the thing, get angry about the thing, then go to that developer, go to that thread, and then read it as you did and go, well, he's not attacked the thing. He's not said that I should. He's not saying what's being said here.
I'm glad I read his thread first, actually.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people will have done that. I think a lot of people will have gotten their blood up. I've seen reactions to the IGN thing from I saw Moist Critical. Is it Moist Critical? I always get confused what that guy's name is.
Charlie, yeah.
Charlie, yeah.
He made a video about it?
On it. Yeah, and he largely agreed with the kind of the sentiment expressed, but he took pains to say in the video, but I don't think this dev is like being a dick. And it's that kind of, I think that people who then come in with kind of a critical eye on this stuff and look at what the source says, I think there's no fire there. There's definitely been cases of developers saying something stupid on Twitter and getting harassed for it, not correctly so, but like understandably so.
Yeah.
This isn't one of them. He
didn't
say
at all.
anything really worthy of frustration. So
no, I don't think he did.
I think the audience on the whole probably realized that once they actually read what he said. So it's good.
I 100% think Destin, when talking about this, should name the people and show the things he's talking about. I do think he misrepresented what he was saying or misunderstood.
I would veer on misunderstood, to be clear. Like I think he misunderstood. And
yes,
but there is a big consequence when all of us have platforms, all of us have to think about how we represent other people's opinions.
Yeah, and again, I think that the initial tweets also could have been phrased a little differently.
He definitely had some stuff in there that was like, oh, just tweak that.
The first one, to be honest, is really the only real issue, and it's also like he does credit the D&D IP for some of the success of Baldur's Gate 3, but they didn't get funding from Wizards, and I would think most gamers don't know that Baldur's Gate is a D&D property.
That's interesting. Do you think that the association doesn't? I guess it's not, is it? It's a fair point.
How would it even like get traction from it? Like, it's not getting SEO. Like, only people who've played a Baldur's Gate game or have looked it up would know that.
So therefore, they would already have played.
It's a fair
point. It's a fair point. I don't know enough about kind of the D&D overlap to, but yeah, no, they wouldn't have funded it. No, it's a licensing deal, I imagine, just a standard kind of pay you money, we use your stuff kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think most of their money probably came from a very successful early access, which again, like, is the thing that I would love to see the industry take away from this whole conversation, which in the end of the day, I'm glad we're having, again, aside from the fact that I wish the conversation was more just about how fucking awesome Baldur's Gate 3 is, and I just feel bad for Larian, but
I'm sure they're fine with their massively successful, brilliant.
True. I would be surprised if they don't get Game of the Year, but it's so hard to say that when Starfield's just.
But the early access is a key part, right? I remember the early access launching, and there were people in the press who were like giving it bad reviews and stuff, and kind of.
Oh, were they? I don't remember that.
Crap about it. Yeah, totally. I think early access is something that we're still not brilliant. And I understand it. Early access, I'm really torn on because I totally get the player kind of perspective.
I also partly don't.
You're taking money, therefore it better be good. I totally respect that, but at the same time, it also is a work in progress. So I don't know. I don't think we've worked out quite well. It's got a bit weird.
Tracking just moved. Hang on.
I like it.
There we go.
I don't think we've worked out how to explain early access to the audience and how to make the early access comfortable for the audience.
So I'm not sure how I feel about early access in that. It obviously would have helped them fund development, and thus I feel like it's very solid for indies. But you are also charging full price for an incomplete product, and I don't know
Right.
how I
That's
feel
why
about
we've
that.
never done it. Is I've never been super sure where we should fall on that. So we've never done a game that way
Yeah.
because of the exact challenges you're talking about. That
Well,
like
then it's
I
like,
don't know where I stand on it.
do you like, as media? I know that some outlets do, but like I wouldn't know the solution if I were a reviews editor. Is like, do we review early access games because people can
Arguably, there's
buy
a
them?
yeah, people have a right to know, right? Like if it's a product that's for sale. I like I said, that's the thing is I would like that to be the discourse we're having right now of kind of unpicking that and
Much
trying to
more
work
interesting.
out that much more interesting,
It's
different
like the ethics
opinions.
of early
Like
access. Yeah, because it's I
yeah,
really don't know the answer. Like I think I'm uncomfortable with it. I think that like charging full price for something in early access, it's obviously beneficial to the dev team, and at the end of the day, if it helps make a better video game, that's a huge win. But I'm also just don't know how that falls ethically with consumers. Like they're paying
mm.
you to beta test. I
It's a
don't.
weird one. Like because
I'm really not
I
sure.
the best equate. I can't remember who said this to me, but someone because I've had this conversation many times because I'm fascinated by it, even though we've never done it ourselves. The equating it to like a TV show is one of the cool things about making a TV show versus a movie is the first few episodes go up and you see that audience reaction and it's a real reaction because they're people watching TV with commercials and the whole setup and experience and you can kind of see what's happening with your first few episodes while you're either writing or in production on like later stages of that show and you can kind of steer and like you'll often see this in like the first season of a show like about halfway through the show like oh, that character no one likes suddenly has less scenes than they
Does
did
that
before.
work that
Or
way?
this,
Because I would
some
have
it
thought
used
like a
to in
lot of
network
seasons are
TV.
done. The writing is
In the
done.
old, I'm talking about like the old 20, 24 episodes a season kind of days, those kind of, or 20, well, it would vary, but
I
those
guess I
kind of
always
old.
assumed the production pipeline was writings done first.
No, no, no.
Interesting.
I suspect it probably is now with the kind of the limited length, like 10 episodes or less structure that we have now because of streaming. I imagine it's less cut and dry. But no, there would like there's definitely a lot of historical like accounts of like a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there
Hmm.
would be the first episodes of a season would be airing while they were still had time to adjust or fix things.
No
Like they
way.
would be
That's wow. That's
down the
super
road, but
interesting.
yeah, they would be that would be the way that would roll through,
Well,
and
I
you
know
would have.
Sopranos when spoilers, haven't finished the
It's an old
season.
show.
I mean, it's pretty
It's fine.
old. Spoilers, I
Yeah.
guess. When Tony's mom dies because the actress
Mm.
actually died.
Yeah.
I think that season is a mess. And it's because they clearly didn't know how to
Yeah.
respond to it. They
They
don't
were
know. The
reeling from
script
that
is
and
like,
figuring it out.
this, and nothing sticks. They have like all these conflicts that are resolved in the same episode. It comes across as very incomplete because somebody died, which like doesn't happen anymore. I guess you just adjust from the top if somebody dies.
Because
You
you well,
rewrite
and
the
your
whole season.
production the shows are made a lot faster in the current climate, which is
Hmm.
part of the discussion happening around the strikes at the moment as well. Like things are made very quickly, so you could kind of, so yeah, things would be adjusted on the fly. But my point is, what's good about that old model of TV production was that you could learn, or even just between like season one and season two, you kind of course correct and change how you're doing things. But you were getting data from an audience who are actually engaged. It's not like going to say a focus group where it's a bunch of people who've not paid for the game. They're playing it in a weird environment. They're answering questions in a weird room with a person who's interviewing them. There is something to be said for what someone who's put down money for this game and is loading it up on their home games console or PC, having a true experience. What does that person respond to and like? And that's very good, valuable data. So I think you could make a compelling argument that a game like Baldur's Gate, yes, they made money during early access, which is awesome, but I bet a lot of the things that right now everyone's loving about the game were also arrived upon as part of the feedback they were getting from that community early on. They were balancing, they were figuring it out, especially with something
Hmm.
as complex as an RPG where there's so many balancing challenges and
Have you
problems
played it,
there. I have not got the
dude?
time.
It's
I look at it. It's amazing. I think
it's
everyone I know is
so
voice
good.
actor in it, but I just because they just cast every British voice actor basically in some role in
And
that.
they all do a great job. Yeah, I mean
They'll do an amazing
it's a
job, but I've not.
huge game. Like
Yeah,
it's massive, but it's like,
I can't
dude,
right now. I don't have any free time. I am deep in work that I can't talk about at the moment.
shut
So
up, lazy dev.
I know.
What
I
do
wish
you
if I only
know?
had passion for games, if I played games, I would be a
Play
better
video
gamer.
games.
It is a thing though. I'm not playing anywhere near enough games right now. It's the thing. Another thing you said in your video, the that joke about the person who's played a game over the weekend and comes in pitching the idea,
Yeah.
like that is such, and specifically a joke about creative directors. I think more than anyone else gets that. Like my team, that literally was a joke someone made about me in a meeting today.
It happens
Oh
so
shit!
much. Like
Who
this,
switched on
like
Mike's Xbox? Where did this
maybe
come
devs
from?
should learn something from Baldur's Gate 3. I promise you, there are a bunch of like level designers who are pissed off because someone
There are
was
people
like,
being
"Look at the
paid
verticality."
right now to play Baldur's Gate because it's research, because it's
Also
education.
true, yeah. But like Elden Ring was a big one. Like that definitely came up all the time in meetings, and
You
I
can tell
think
how
Tears of the
long
Kingdom too.
you can tell a dev cycle. You can work out how long a dev cycle is at any given studio by when the first game they had come out that had an Elden Ring mechanic in it was. I'm basically tracking it back and going, oh, okay, so there's
I
an
like
Elden
the
Ring game
idea.
and this game coming out in 24. So
You can track how long a dev cycle was based on the proximity to release of a Zelda game. Like
100%.
whenever the most recent Zelda came out, a bunch of shit changed.
And I think
Just
that's one of
across
those
the
things
board.
that it will be something that probably someone who's never worked in game development probably this is I'm about to ruin all games for you is like if there is a mechanic that is so awesome and special that everyone loves it, it's going to be the cliche in 3 years from now. And it's
Yes.
so funny when you see like, especially this is very noticeable in open world games, that like an open world game will come out in this year and that will have a mechanic that blows everyone away. And then the year after that, no other game will have that mechanic and everyone will complain that that mechanic's not there.
Yeah.
And then the year after that, everything will have that mechanic and everyone will complain that it's now overdone.
Except nobody
And
did
it's
the
that
Nemesis
cycle.
system.
Well, that was
Nobody
because
did
of patents, wasn't it?
No one had done it before the patents. And then the patents
someone had to have a good idea first. You know?
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
It was like there was
Someone has to
several
have
years
the
before they
idea, Alanah,
filed.
before I can steal it as a professional. I shouldn't be expected. Game developers should not be expected. Players need to lose this expectation that developers will come up with ideas. That's incredibly unfair. That's the
How dare you?
Someone take that clip.
That's not in my job description. Come on now. There is like some stuff that I've come to meme where game dev ideaing is concerned and that I'm so like hostile to it. And like one of them is the blight. Where's every game gotta have a fucking blight? There's some sort of like the sickness. Like it's always, there's just some fucking
existential
black
terror.
muck that's spreading on the land that you have to save, like stuff like that. That I'm like, I get why you did it.
You know, that's a narrative challenge. That's because you need to have
a reason for them to not be able to explore. Yeah, 100%.
A reason that everything's affected. If it's just a bloke, if you've just got Space Hitler, then it's like, well, we can have like fights with that character. That character could be somewhere leading an army or whatever. But if you need the whole of the world to be affected, blights are very easy.
100% know why it exists. We just gotta sort out the amount of fucking blights we've got out here, y'all.
We gotta come up with different particle effects for the blight. I think we just have to make it a bit more visually interesting.
Somebody do something else, you know? It can't all be the sickness, the corruption. How many corruptions are there? It's just use a different word. Like it's just stuff like that ends up. I get why it exists. I get that that's easier to explain, and that players probably largely don't care. They're like, cool, got it, can't go there. That's why
I'm contractually obligated to say that Kingdom Hearts has the best narratives ever.
They got some blight.
Cannot be faulted. Love will save us. It's a beautiful thing.
That works both for Disney and for every Kingdom Hearts fan who you never want to upset. That's
a community I will never upset on the internet.
You shouldn't. don't even worry about it. I tweeted I tweeted once that I don't know anyone who just sort of likes Kingdom Hearts. You either think it's ridiculous or you have 3 Keyblades. And I had so many friends who are Kingdom Hearts fans like send pictures of their 3 Keyblades. It's always 3. They always have them.
Specifically 3. I like that.
The darkness. What is it in Kingdom Hearts? It's not the blight. It's
Heartless.
the heartless. There you go. It's just
You
yeah,
hear
it's just such
that?
a
Did you
common
hear
thing.
that, Disney fans? Tron Identity. It's out now. You should pick it up. I know you're. I know you're well. I see
We
some
have a
really
huge
good
Kingdom
Tron
Hearts
levels
fan
in the
base.
Kingdom Hearts. I went back and I looked. I've actually got some Kingdom Hearts Tron toys up on the shelf. Like I went and look. There's genuinely some really good Tron stuff in Kingdom Hearts. So yeah.
Which one?
Kudos.
I haven't played that one.
That's where I get confused. The numbering system does confuse me a little bit.
No, it doesn't. It makes perfect sense.
I'll admit the weakness on my part when it comes to the amount of controversies, the number of title options you have for this episode to get the maximum minutes.
Kingdom Hearts 2 numbering nonsense. He is in Kingdom Hearts 2, Tron himself, but I'm sure there are levels in other. Yeah,
there's one where they do Legacy and one where they do the original movie, and both are really nicely handled. Also, and it's something you do when you're trying to work out how do we render a Tron world in a video game. You go back to all the other people who've ever done that problem and kind of look at lots of poring over screenshots and videos and going,
just a lot of blue lights in it.
That was our main conclusion. Yeah, lots of blue lights. Stick a blue light on it.
Pretty much, you just chuck a blue light on there.
I could send you hundreds of pages of docs of my team painstakingly working that stuff out. But you just said put a blue light on it.
Blue
if you'd been there, Alanah, you'd have saved us months of development time.
A couple of blue neons, really. Yeah. You'd be right. It'd be fine.
The amount of dev time I've wasted.
Hey, I'm here if you need. Devs I can't be expected to make ideas. Yeah, it's been a really weird controversy to blow up this big because it's so mild in the grand scheme of things. Like, what people are actually saying, like, I don't know. It's a very weird one, but it's obviously taken the internet by a storm.
There's no baddie. It's kind of like the Blight. It's what we were saying before. Is there's no mecha Hitler to fight. It's the Blight. It's not.
Yeah, both sides are right, but they're talking about different things.
Both sides are right, but talking past each other. Yeah. There's not really a baddie who's done a bad thing, so it doesn't tire in the same way as that.
Happy that both of them are speaking about the things they're speaking about, but also understand why it caused issues. And again, wish that there was just more positive about Larian, but I still think that people have said very nice things about it regardless.
That's the thing. I saw someone saying, I think about 7 different controversies ago, is the game lasts. People will remember Baldur's Gate 3 as like a masterpiece. No one will remember any of this a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Like it's the work itself always kind of outlives the drama. Yeah.
Just makes me wish we could fix the communication problem. Like, I don't know how to fix it. Like, there's so much issue
with communication is probably, unfortunately, the honest answer.
That's what I always assumed would happen to CDPR. Yeah. Like, they were so transparent about the development of Cyberpunk, and that is actually where they went wrong. It's like, for all of us who are previewing that game, I think I played it once and saw it behind closed doors twice, and I don't believe they ever lied to me. I think everything that they had ever said to me that I then said, they told me this, they believed would be in the game. And
we've been through some dev cycles now as well, so you understand.
Shit changes constantly.
Make stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, week to week stuff. Like, that's one of the harder things of the job that I didn't expect, is keeping track of what is still exists and what doesn't. In my brain,
I mean, you don't have a perfectly maintained game design document that is always up to date and true to what the current state of the game is.
Working on it, man.
Shocking to me.
It's the thing they did is, in theory, what we want, which is be super transparent and talk a lot about what they're doing. Yeah. The problem is that they didn't have the PR in place that most studios have to be like, hey, you can't say that. No Man's Sky did the same thing, though I think maybe a little bit more egregiously. But they basically well, that's not there anymore. But when it's taken as advertising, you can't do that. So, like, we have this weird level of, like, the devs are trying to be transparent, but all of it's taken as marketing. So if stuff isn't in it that they thought would be in it and the plan changes, that's lying to consumers. So it's like, I don't think anyone intentionally lied. They were wrong.
And the audience isn't. I don't think the audience is wrong to feel like they've been
not at all,
because it's not their job to pass that. But yeah, no, when you're making something, when you're pursuing any creative endeavor, there's iteration, there's things, there's cul-de-sacs. You realize, oh, that's working, that's not working. And yeah, I think unfortunately, I don't think the audience wants us to communicate all of that stuff. I think the audience probably does want stuff that's tells them about stuff, but it's polished. One of the
They
things
know what
I've
to
had
expect.
I've had a lot of conversations over the years, like behind the scenes. I don't think I've even said some of this publicly. Like, I would love us as an industry to be like, say, the film industry, where they announce a movie years before they start, a bunch of time before they even start shooting it, because there's no way to hide the production of a movie. Like, there's just too many moving parts and physical locations, etc. So
I don't
movies
think
get
games
announced super early,
can do that.
and that's the point I'm
The
saying is
games
I've
change
always
too
been on the
much.
side. Yeah, exactly. Or they get cancelled, or they if it was the norm, if every game that ever started production was announced and then a bunch of them just got cancelled in the same way as films do, the audience would kind of accept it and be a thing.
Get
But it would
used to it.
require all of us to do it all at once, which will never happen.
No.
So I've always wished for that. I've always wished that we could just be completely open. I'm in this fun position right now where everyone knows I'm working on Tron, so I don't have to like worry about blurting that out in conversation,
Yeah, but there was
which is
like
really
months
rare.
of like even on this show of having to be careful about that. Like
Yeah, but it's
it's
nice
a long
because
time.
now I'm working on the next thing, and I can just I can't say anything about it, but I can say people know what I'm working on, and that's lovely. But at the same time, like, if I came on here and I was like, and here's a cool idea we're working on right now, and then that gets removed 2 weeks later because we realize, oh shit, that won't work on
Again,
platform
it becomes kind of
XYZ, then
it's
I'm a
not a
liar, right?
lie. It just becomes false advertising a little, which is why it's really complicated. It's like
So
I
I
we
think honestly, yeah, I think honestly, the end result of these kind of controversies is that it definitely incentivizes developers just to not just
GDPR should
don't.
not have shared as much as they did. That is where they went wrong.
Yeah.
Their goals were unrealistic, which is obviously an internal problem. I still fucking love that game, but they overshared in a way that to me was a delight. Like I loved getting all of that
It's
information and having
wonderful.
all the devs
Yeah.
like be interviewed throughout that process rather than afterwards. It was so nice, but it was also probably their biggest mistake outside of launching the game when they did on console,
I
which
think
is
it's
obviously for you.
unfortunate if you could go to every single person who cared about your game and like sit them down and go, okay, this is we're going to talk about this. I'm going to be transparent, but at the same time, with game development, for lots of reasons, things shift as you're going through the process, and sometimes that will be for good reasons, sometimes it will be for bad reasons. You'll never know. Sometimes it'll be because I'm a lazy idiot and I make a mistake, and have that real 20-minute talk with every single person in the audience. I think most people on an individual basis would go, oh yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, tell me about what you're putting in the game. That's really exciting. But the problem is, once it's a crowd, you can't do that. You can't rely on the audience to have that knowledge, and why should they? It's not
No, and
their
you'd have
job to
to
have that
remind them
knowledge.
every time. No, and that is part of it. Like
It's you know what? That's how we ended up with the little disclaimer, not actual gameplay footage on so many game trailers. And because that had to be restated enough, and now that's a cliche. Now you see that and it's like, well, no, I know that's not gameplay footage. But for
yeah,
the longest time, that was a
people didn't know.
controversy. The people felt that those trailers were lying to them. So
Yeah,
it's I don't want to have to do those kind of. I don't want like a little scrolling piece of text underneath my head at all times going, Mike is talking excitedly about things he hopes to do, but please don't hold on to it.
yeah.
Blah,
It's
blah,
also
blah, blah.
just
So
I. There's a lot of stuff that I don't actually think should be on the player. I don't. I don't like, even though I'm sure I've done it a bunch of times. The hey, game dev's really hard when it comes like in a statement to the public.
I
Is
don't
game
like that
dev
because I've
hard?
had other jobs and they're harder than game dev. I'll throw that out there.
Fair.
A
It
lot of them.
is, I
Yeah.
think, very hard. For me personally,
Yeah.
it's not the hardest job, but it's like the hardest task for sure is working on
But
something with
I
hundreds of
guess
people
my
that
point
changes
is we
constantly.
don't accept that about other professions. When I
And
was a
it shouldn't,
barman, I
it's not
couldn't
the
stand
player's
on top of the bar
business
and be
how
like, hey, everyone,
this is
working a
really
bar is
hard.
really hard. Please
Exactly.
wait for your beers. I'm having a hard night. No one cares. They want their beer.
No, and
I get that. I
it
get
should
that.
never be on the player's mind. It is not the
Mm.
player's problem that it's hard. Like, is it hard? Yes. Do I think that we're in a pretty weird position as an industry where most of the consumers don't understand the process of making video games? Yeah, I think people have more of an understanding of how films are made or how TV shows are made than they do video games. Never not going to be frustrated by, again, especially because I used to do it, YouTubers talking about game dev as though they know what they're talking about just because they've been on YouTube for a long time.
Well, that's and I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant because I've been on film sets, but I've never worked on a film, so I don't know the intricacies of it. So what I'm about to say might be massively ignorant. At least with film, the fundamental mechanics of making a film are relatively consistent in the sense of there's a camera and you pointed at some stuff that happens, and then you do some visual effects if you need to on that footage, and then you cut it together and it's a film. Whereas in games, like, that's the reason I saw someone saying this the other day was, why do more game devs not do, why are there not like YouTube channels from game devs where they explain how games were made by other people? It's because any qualified game dev knows they can't tell you how another person's game was made, because it could have been made in 100 different ways.
Yeah.
If anyone who presents themselves as I understand how games are made is immediately setting themselves up to look daft to the community, because you don't. I don't know.
You can't do the Inception.
About...
How did they get that shot? Well, they just spun the room. It's not that practical.
I bet like Christopher Nolan could watch an Avengers movie and go, I know exactly how they got that shot.
Yeah.
I bet he could. I can't do that for another game dev. I can't, even if we limit it to just indie games in my budget range. When we've been hiring recently, and when we're talking to people who are hiring, I would say half the conversations I have in interviews are just, so how does it work where you work? Like, that's a studio I've always liked the work of. And they'll describe it and it will be miles away from how we do things or how I've ever seen.
Even the questions that I get most often now that I'm in dev is like, what's the process for this? Or like, how do I apply for a games writing job? I'm like, depends on the studio. I couldn't tell you. Like, it's so vastly different. Like, what's it like being a games writer? Well, probably very different at SMS to it is at Bithell Games. Like, the process for everybody is so incredibly
different.
You
have to be called Mike Bithell, which
you have to be Mike Bithell, which has like been a real challenge for me actually. I've been meaning to talk to HR there about that. It's like it's been really tough for me to become Mike Bithell.
You see Mission Impossible, it's like that. Everyone has to put that on.
Yeah, it's vastly different, and that makes it tough for anybody to speak about it with any level of authority. But I still, again, for all of my frustration, again, knowing I used to do it, I can't believe it's the weirdest thing to me that anybody listened to anything I said at IGN about game development ever, just because I had visited a few studios and spoke to people. Well, I didn't fucking know what I was talking about. And I like, why do we listen to anybody? It's so weird.
But the reason they listen to you, Alanah, I'm sure the reason they listen to you, and I remember seeing stuff from you at IGN, was it's the humility you're bringing that makes that. Like, if you're a journalist who's covering games and you come in with that humility and you talk about games in that way and you interview people and you talk to people and you present,
which I do feel like journalists tend to have more than YouTubers, which is why they become journalists probably.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe, but I think that's a big part of it. I don't expect anyone who doesn't work in games to fully understand how games are made. We can't. And I don't expect people who work in Game Studio A to understand how games are made at Game Studio B. But if you go in with that humility and that desire to learn, then that's awesome. And you can and I think that can be presented really well. I love the people I like who talk about games in podcasts, YouTube, websites. They walk into the room like they're a student. They walk in to learn from what they're seeing.
Probably why so many journalists end up working at devs is because the
good ones.
I always figured out that I would end up making the switch because I liked writing fiction so much my whole life. But my favorite thing to do at IGN was called IGN First, which is like mini documentaries. So I visited a bunch of studios and I would interview people, and it was my favorite thing. And that's when I was like, man, I really like game development, huh? Like, I'm very interested in this. I need to go do that. And that stuff is interesting. But to my point, I don't know, 20 minutes ago, I think a lot of that shouldn't be on players. Players don't need to know how hard the thing was. There's no point where telling the person who's spending money on your game that it's hard. Like, yes, I think there's a lot of very interesting context that I think it would be helpful if players knew or were open to, but being like, it's just really hard to do that. It's not their problem. The quality is their problem.
Yeah, I've asked my not online friends who play games but don't interact with anything, what do you actually want to know about a game before it comes out? And everyone's response is always some screenshots, tell me what the gameplay is like, give me a trailer that shows me kind of what the vibes are, maybe an interview with you about what's in it, and that's fine. There's not, I think transparency is something that a hardcore audience really cares about, and I love that there are ways of them getting that information through, I guess, things like this as well. That's cool, but the vast majority of the audience just wants to be entertained, and they want as much information going in as they can get that's going to honestly depict what the experience they're getting is. I was listening to Chris McQuarrie, who writes and directs Mission Impossible, or the last few Mission Impossibles. There's a British podcast called Empire Magazine, that's in America as well. But they do like these long form interviews with him, and they've got longer each time. So the interview for him with the new movie is 9 hours long, which is amazing. Like, as someone who's a fan of, like, I love listening to like directors talk because there's so many overlaps.
How did they even do that?
But it's 9 hours of just like, I'm gonna tell you. He likes to talk. You don't know anyone like this. It's like 9 hours of him just talking about process.
Oh my god! I mean, it'd be really easy to interview Austin for 9 hours. To be fair, like that would be a piece of cake.
Do a 9 hour interview. That would be possible. But like, But one of the things he points out is that he and Tom Cruise, like their focus is that bigger audience rather than the film nerds. He's a film nerd. He loves talking to film nerds. He's doing this 9 hour interview for film nerds, but he knows that the audience is actually beyond that.
Mostly aren't that.
Yeah.
So then,
and they just want honest entertainment ultimately.
Yes, and again, that's why I think we shouldn't burden players with it's hard. Like, it's just never say it like it is. And I don't think many of them know how hard it is, and it's my gut response to why didn't they just fucking do this? Because so much of it is, trust me, they tried, or somebody thought of that and it was impossible. But that leaves me with, what do we do about this communication problem? If it feels like gamers hate devs, gamers hate journalists, journalists hate gamers, like these three separate parts of this industry, and publishers just stop making money, are so angry at each other. I don't know what the solution is, because like I would have said transparency, and I think that is what I thought until the Cyberpunk stuff happened, where transparency was their biggest problem, where they were too transparent, with the exception of, I always want to bring this up, they got a lot of shit for saying it runs surprisingly well on console when it ran terribly on console. That was an investor call. Like, that was not a public-facing comment. That was not said to press. He didn't tell gamers it runs surprisingly well on console. He said it to investors.
Also, this is why we need some kind of glossary. If we do the transparency route, is it runs surprisingly well.
When you say that
when
to
I
investors,
say that about one of our builds, I mean 15 frames a second.
100%.
Oh my god!
And like that.
Yeah.
That is a thing that's also not the fault of the consumer or the media that they quoted that, because he said it in a public forum.
Because the consumer doesn't know that every game, you first run it on a console, you're lucky if it hits 5 to 10 frames a second.
One of the first videos I made,
and then you optimize the shit out of it forever and ever. So surprisingly good.
It's super negative.
Just had been.
Yeah, what he meant was it's really bad. Like that, and one of the first videos I ever made about Cyberpunk, I said, "There's no way this game runs on Xbox One and PS4. I'd be surprised if it runs on console at all." Like, seeing it on PC, I was like, there's no fucking way. So then when I see the quote from, again, an investor call of someone saying it runs surprisingly well, that translates very directly to me as, this doesn't run.
It's bad, but we have hope.
But it's there. But it's not on the consumer or the public or even the media that thing he said in public has a different context, and that's like a whole issue.
I think, yeah. So for me, it's about context. And
how do you explain the context of that quote? You can't.
I think a journalist, in my opinion, and this is, I'm telling journalists how to do their job while saying that they shouldn't tell us how to do that. So I understand the hypocrisy here. I think a journalist should provide that context. A journalist should reach out to the developer and be like, you said on a public investor call that it was surprisingly good on console. So I'm that's a quote I'm going to run. Would you like to provide any context to what that means? Well, obviously at CD Projekt, we do the best we can.
Couple of counterpoints for you.
Okay, go for it.
First, the journalist did note that it was on an investor call. That doesn't mean anything to the audience. The amount of editorialization that would be required to be like, an investor call is a specific thing, surprisingly well is a negative, is also like just too much of a leap. Second, if you ask CDPR that question, because they wouldn't have expected that quote to go public, the answer that they have to give is nonsense. Once the quote is out there, the journalists can't really help them with the quote. Once it took off, and it did take off in headlines, you can reach out to them and be like, what did you mean by this? And they're not going to be like, we meant like in dev terms surprisingly well. Like they can't. There's no correct answer to that. So it's like the minute they said it, it was for the world to hear.
So the only solution is not to say it. Then right?
That's the issue. Is like
that's the only solution.
If their downfall was transparency, but then at the same time we want more transparency so that people understand a little bit more about how games are made, so they can like stop with the why did you fucking do this? Like,
I think the problem is that because I've heard the same thing. Like we just want to know how games are made so that we can understand that games are complex to make. I'm not saying that to show off. You know, they're much less complex to make than other things, but they are complex. So I can't educate every audience member. I can't be confident that every audience member is going to know how games are made so that they can contextualize anything that comes out. So ultimately, my only choice is just not to engage and not to say anything in that situation. If I'm CD Projekt Red, I just can't say anything about the game's performance on console until it's 30 FPS, and then I can say that, you know.
Yeah, but that, I guess, I agree that actually the solution is less transparency, unfortunately. But that leaves us with, why did they do this? Stupid devs, why have you made this decision? And I guess the reality is you just have to let that happen. Like, you just have to...
Yeah, no, I think...
I just don't like the landscape that we're in. And, like, there's this such a weird thing with
criticism.
People...
I'm okay
with... for sure. And
when a game's out, if it's not good, you can...
criticism and harassment are not the same thing. Like, exactly. They're not the same thing. Criticism were allowed.
So the harassment is the thing to solve. But I think if someone wants to harass, if someone wants to like be mean to a person for no point on the internet, I'm not sure any degree of transparency. I think that was a lesson we all learned in the whole Gamergate thing of like, because that was a mistake I made early on, was I tried to like go, well, actually, you know, ethics in games journalism, which is really reasonable. And I realized very quickly that, well, not as quickly as I should have, they don't want to engage. They don't want to learn. They don't want to have a conversation about the nuance of this.
Oh, I have stuff like that.
They're just looking for a reason to be...
Yeah, I'll be like, there is no point in engaging in this conversation because I'm aware they don't give a fuck what I have to say. They care about me replying.
I'm embarrassed how long it took me to learn that lesson, but once I had learned that lesson,
I did the same thing with Gamergate, Mike. I engaged with them and they were all very nice to me, which was very weird. But I did it because I was like, I want to understand your perspective. For a very long time.
We were stupid babies, but we learned our lesson, didn't we? And that's the thing, unfortunately, is that I
don't like the takeaway here. Like
neither do I.
One of the things I really don't like is that there's this like people who buy video games are gamers, but if you're a dev or a journalist and you buy video games, you're not a gamer. Where does it come from that people think game devs and journalists don't play games? They do.
I've never understood
why they do it. They play
even though
everything.
I did just say I'm not playing enough games at the moment, but yeah.
Except for you, fake gamer Mike Bithell, everybody else in the industry is playing games.
Yeah, I would love that to be the thing from now on. Of like, let's be honest here, game developers play games, except Mike Bithell,
except for Mike,
but everyone else. Yeah. If we could just do that for now. No, I think
that's the level of transparency we want. Except for Mike.
To me, that demonstrates that assumption. If that's something that anyone watching this assumes, if anyone watching this is like, I'm a gamer, I play games, devs don't play games. That is something I think that people are putting on themselves as like an othering tactic. They're looking at, this other person is different than me. What's a line of difference I can find with that person? I don't think because there's no evidence that game devs don't play games. There's a lot of evidence that they do.
To the contrary, yeah.
We're constantly stealing other people's ideas. Like,
and that's why you do
passionate.
You just there's so many.
I'm there
like,
with my little game
program,
design.
I think I edited this out of the video too. Is like, if you have programming skills and you want to be a programmer, you're not going to fucking do it in game dev unless you like video games. This is the other thing no one gets.
This is the other thing no one gets is how much better off any game dev would be
so much more money
in any other industry. I've got a friend who's a programmer in the fintech sector, like makes like banking software. I think actually might even be a listen to the show. Hey Sam, but like is into games and has like occasionally said like, could I get into games? Like, and I was like, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure there's loads of jobs.
How much they earn?
And he asked me what the average salary was, and there's surveys and stuff you can look at. So I brought it up on my phone, like that's the regular code of salary of the games industry, and the guy was like, no, what? No,
yeah.
So no, everyone who's here is here because they're passionately interested in entertaining people with video games.
100%.
But if someone doesn't want to, I don't think that wins any arguments. I don't think anyone who was listening to this who's like, they're not real gamers. Those people are not going to be won over by that argument because they don't want to be won over by that argument. And everyone who instinctively understands that probably people who make games are into games isn't sending harassment to people on Twitter because they don't like something in a game, a decision made by someone 5 rungs up the ladder from the person that you're talking
Yeah,
to on
I feel
Twitter.
like I'm not even really addressing the, the people who are responsible for the harassment, because like there's always going to
They're
be keyboard
gone.
warriors. We can't fix that problem.
You
The
have to kind of talk
solution,
past them to everyone else,
exactly.
unfortunately.
And it's that there are loads of people who are like frustrated about video games, um that have this divide that I just always feel like if we were more unified in like, imagine the world where, again, I said that this in that video, the
Imagine
gamers
all the
vouch for
people
the
living for
devs.
today. Yeah.
The gamers all are on this, because I so often think that that's true, and you just not know, is that the gamers are on the
That's there
same side as the dev
sometimes.
team.
That's I've seen that happen, especially with the delays conversation. If you
Right.
anytime a delay is announced, I'm
True.
heartened by how many people are replying to that, going, "Take your time. That's
That's
cool.
true. And that's a sort of
That's
recent
nice.
thing.
That got through.
That has
That's
gotten
recent."
better. But there's a lot of it. Like, I have a few friends who work on very microtransaction heavy live service games, and a few friends who work on mobile games.
Yeah,
And
we've all done it.
well, actually, in those instances, the mobile games specifically is like, I have again a few friends who work at a specific studio making just money raking mobile games, and I was like, how is that? Like, do you have trouble doing that? And they were like, I worked at studios that didn't pay me, and people yelled at me for a really long time, and then I just wanted to support my family after a while.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, okay. But like, it's not like they are ever going to advocate for exploitative microtransactions. That's not a thing that the dev team is asking for under any circumstances. No one is asking to do that.
But the audience is paying for that, so therefore, as you
Yes.
say, capitalism kicks in at that point. I think that is a nuance that's interesting, and it doesn't counteract what you're saying about game devs playing games. But one thing that I think is interesting is I definitely know game developers who enjoy making games a lot more than they enjoy playing them. Like, there's definitely an interesting, that is a different skill. I used to work with actually, it's the guy who drew this picture of Megatron above my head. I used to work with a concept artist
Cool.
who never played video games, didn't care for video games at all, but just really liked fucking drawing the coolest nerd sci-fi art you've ever seen. Do you want to tell him to not make your games look pretty because he doesn't play video games as much as you? There's a lot of people working
Yeah,
games who
I work with
love the
somebody who doesn't
art.
play games at all.
Yeah.
And it's, I think I've said this on the show before, but I find it valuable. That
Yeah.
their input is very, like, doesn't understand games community, doesn't know popular cultural touch points. But it means we get a perspective that's very fresh and like not at all jaded. And sometimes like they'll pitch something that we're like, well, we can't, that would just be this game. And they're like, oh, my bad, someone did that.
That's
oh,
cool, and that's the other thing that I think goes over a lot of people's heads. And this is something we definitely do wrong in terms of how we communicate how games are made. Like, games are made by teams. So that person's presence on the team, if that person was making every decision about the business model for your upcoming first party game, that would be bad, because that person doesn't know how the industry works. They don't know how what gamers expect. They don't know anything about that stuff. But that person is part of a team. So therefore, they're bringing something. And as you say, if something is a little off track, then the team kind of pulls it back in. And I think we as an industry, like, we are very auteur focused in terms of how we communicate about our work, and just kind of emphasizing that team, emphasizing. And I know I run Bithell Games, so I'm always out on a limb when I go down this road, but like, emphasizing the group, I think, helps a lot with that, because it also emphasizes that, because you see it a lot, don't you, in like, oh, I don't like this thing in a game, so that must have been made by the one visible woman who's on that team. That's come around a bunch of different times. Stuff like that is so
I got
stupid
shit
when
for
you're
things in Ragnarok that people didn't like. I have this thing saved that I was like, should I tweet this one day? That I have.
I think you should podcast it one day.
I'm happy to podcast it. I have this because this was happening for a long fucking time, and this is 18 screenshots that I never did anything with and have not spoken about. The first one, they all say the same thing. The first one is, so according to David Jaffe, Atreus is coming out as bisexual on the next God of War. I blame this grey-haired feminist cunt for it. May you rot in hell. There are 18 of these where people are blaming me because they thought Atreus was going to be bisexual or trans. Because of something David Jaffe.
Is that something that's in the game?
And
Okay.
and I would have nothing to do with it. And David
Jaffe's not
Jaffe
worked
doesn't
on God of
work
War
at the
for 20
studio.
years. Yeah.
The whole thing
Okay.
was like, you literally saw me and went, that one. Like, I had didn't fucking do anything with that.
Jaffe got that story from. Like, that's
I think I kept the screenshots because I thought about tweeting. It would have been in jest to Jaffe.
He'd find it hilarious, I imagine.
I was going to tweet all of them and be like any comment.
What did you say?
David Jaffe, dude, did you have anything to say about this? But I was like, I'm gonna leave that one because the comments the tweets are the comments and tweets are so aggressive that I was like, people are gonna think I'm serious and it's not something that I actually really care about.
Saying what they're saying.
Right. I was like, let me just leave that to itself. But it's like,
yeah, again, like that doesn't make any sense if you know any of the decision-making process that goes into a video game. The idea I think I just walked in
and went, and he's gay now because of my haircut. Like, it's insane. It's insane. I'm so
also,
aware.
Grey hair is unreasonable. What are they saying? That's not.
And also, the person who left that comment, the one that I read, is Geralt of Rivia, with a picture of Geralt as their profile picture, who is the reason that I dyed my hair that color. Like, I literally was like, I want to look like
that's
Geralt.
Grey. Geralt is grey. That's amazing.
I tried to be the same thing.
That yellow-eyed murderer of demons, Alanah Pearce.
Literally, he's looking at the inspiration for the hair color in his own fucking username. No, that certainly happens. And again, talking about harassment is something that it's like, it sucks.
But
it's almost boring to say it sucks.
I could sit down that dude and I'm assuming a dude. That's maybe unfair, but it was definitely a dude. I mean, I could sit down that dude for like half an hour and explain the methodology by which choices are made on a AAA game about key story beats and character elements and designs. I could sit down, I could do all of that, but it wouldn't change the fact that he wanted to be mean to someone on the internet. Like that's something. It wouldn't accomplish anything. They're separate issues.
And he's right. All I really do at work is just walk into meetings and say, and they're gay now.
What if they're gay?
My whole job is I'm just like, and what if everybody's gay?
Yeah, you've streamlined it down. You've just got a little sign you hold up.
You got me there? And everyone's gay. There are a lot of people on the internet that are not worth replying to, and it's a bummer. Like, there's stuff that, like, I think it took me a really long time to figure out that.
Well, you're naturally a communicator. You want to help people understand this kind of stuff, and that, unfortunately, it's not doable in every. As you well know, that's not doable in every situation.
There are some things that, like, I'm sure I would have spoken about this before. One of the biggest challenges of like having any kind of following is people will lie about me all the time, and I just have to let them. And that was a really tough thing because it's like I want to correct all of them. And there are even some things that I've read that I still think about that I would have seen 2 years ago that I was like, didn't correct that. I should have corrected that one. I'm like, no, I shouldn't have. It doesn't make any sense. You just kind of have to let them because A, they won't believe you. B, they just want attention. And C, there are too many lies to correct. You have to just let people lie about you. And it's so brutal to watch people believe this random person saying whatever they want and being like, oh, really? She did that? I'm like, no, that didn't fucking happen at all. But I just have to be like, all right. And there's stuff that I would love to address sometimes if like people are mad at me for something that I didn't do or say. But I recognize that most of those people don't care about what actually happened. They care about being mad.
I can't imagine it at the scale that you have. I've got a couple. There's one guy who I talked to at an event like 10 years ago, and I was desperate for a piss. So I kind of talked to him quite briefly before rushing on. And that guy, occasionally I'll just see like complaining about how I'm aloof and how he didn't have 2 minutes to talk to me when I saw him. It's like, dude, I really fucking needed a piss.
But there's no point really replying to that. It's like, okay.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I'm now just doing it on the podcast, which is very stupid, but not the thing I'll regret most saying on this episode.
It can be tough and like that, and then you blow that up to an entire game studio. I don't know. That's probably part of what leads me to want to have this conversation is like I'm not happy with the current landscape of us versus them with the 3 pillars of the games industry. I just don't. There has to be a solution. I just don't know what it is.
I think on the dev side, which is the only side I'm qualified to have an opinion on, for me, it's just about pulling back a little bit in terms of my communication, when I'm talking about our work, it's very careful and deliberate, which honestly also is better for a game like what we're working on, where we have big partners and we can kind
Yeah.
of do things in a more organized way.
Be
That's been
careful
my
not to
lesson
mislead
from all
people,
this.
even if
Yeah,
you're well intentioned. Like, again, even if it's not a lie, if it's
yeah,
wrong, it's the
and
same thing, really.
first do no harm, right? Hippocratic oath stuff. I think for me that's the way that I'm approaching all of this now. And in terms of gamers and journalism, I think on the whole things are I see much more journalism these days than I love than that irritates me. So I think things are going in the right direction there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think that journalists do try hard to bridge the gap. I don't think it's for lack of effort. It's just
Mm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being like fairy tale levels of naive. Is like we're all here because we love video games. Why are we yelling
Yeah.
at each other? The only people who don't care about video games are like the mega corporate suits who don't have to listen to us squabble.
I do think, unfortunately, the one element, unfortunately, anger continues to be a very powerful financial center for a lot of people who talk about games,
Yeah,
and that's unfortunately that incentive. Unfortunately, I think colors a lot of the conversations because you are
yeah,
like anyone who's watching this, like who's interested in what we're talking about, they're immediately googling Baldur's Gate 3 controversy, right? Or how just to see like what are they talking about? What's the thing they're referencing? So that's driving clicks to people who've talked about this too. And the person who's got the most interesting thumbnail of them roaring down the lens is going to get the most of those clicks. Like it's just
true.
it's a machine. And unfortunately, yeah, anger is currently incentivized by the way people interact with the internet, especially the nature currently where we all engage with the internet via like three platforms,
Yeah,
so everyone is competing for eyeballs in the same places. It means that there is a drive towards that kind of aggressive content. That is the stuff people click on. I find myself, do you do this? Like when I'm scrolling through like my YouTube homepage, I will click on a video without thinking, and it will go into something that is a bit angry, and I'll like shake out of it and be like, oh no, I don't want to watch a drama video about something that like I don't know or care about, but it was engaging because I saw the thumbnail showed emotion, so I wanted to see what was going on. I was intrigued
yeah.
by someone I saw yelling in a mall. You know
No,
what I
I don't
mean?
do that because I don't watch YouTube, which is one of my weirdest habits.
That's worse than a game developer who doesn't play
I
games,
know,
Alanah.
way worse. But no, I don't watch YouTube content. The only stuff that I will watch, which is like the most pretentious thing in the world to say, but it's also true, is like a documentary. I started watching this one channel that makes these documentaries that I wish I could remember the name of the channel. And I watch some stuff that Rahul will watch, so I'll watch it with him. Like we watched Nuke's Top 5, who's this like terrible's not the right way to put it. Sorry, Nuke. He does ghost video compilations and they infuriate us.
Right.
Um,
Right.
this
And
channel
lots of Warhammer
that
tutorials, I
yeah,
assume, as
lots of
well.
Warhammer painting
Yeah,
actually.
big
Shout
into
out to
those as
Luden.
well.
This channel that makes like historical videos, but they do all like it looks like a comic book. Like all they do all their own art
Okay,
and then just narrate over the top. And it's I'm a big fan of that.
that's fun.
But no, I do sometimes have trouble with Rahul consumes a lot of content. He also consumes some of the angry content, and I will sometimes be like, "Oh my fucking god, turn this off!" Like I heard something the other day that I was like, "Holy shit!" They just like every word was the M, she, her, because they just so obnoxious. But it's also sometimes that it doesn't take that many beats of those videos before you can hear somebody talk about me, which has happened twice where I've been like, I'm gonna get brought up in this video, and then I do, and I'm like, I don't want anything to do. Please take this. I don't want anything to do with any of this. Please take this away from me. Like the thread of like angry, like nerd
All
content
roads
creators that
leads to
eventually.
Alanah.
I mean, it's like, and I'm so small, but it's still not that hard to get there. Like it's I don't want anything to do with it, so I
You're
just
definitely a
don't
node
consume
for
any of
those
it.
kind of douchebags. And I'll be honest, like the thing that I like is YouTube seems to get me enough that I don't get served the really awful stuff. I'll get served the this Star Wars movie was less good than we anticipated video,
Sure.
and then just it'll have like a throwaway
Yeah.
thing of, and also there's quite a lot of women in these now. And it's like, oh no, that's the pipeline. They're starting to.
Yeah, it gets you down there
drag
pretty
towards that.
fast. Yeah, there was one that Rahul fell asleep and autoplayed that I had to turn off the other day, and I'm not gonna name any of the details because they will make a video about me. Where like every 2 minutes it was basically word for word, women are fucking stupid. Like so frequently. Like, oh, big, strong, powerful women these days, idiots. Like, it just kept happening to the extent that I was like, oh my God. Like, so frequently just like pivoting the video as often as possible to I hate women in a way that I was like, I thought that this wasn't quite that real. Like, I think I had expected that it was more of like
this is
like
we
we
exaggerate.
exaggerate.
Like whenever I've seen stuff of this, it's like a parody.
Yeah.
It's like exaggerated. They don't just yell that women are stupid. Surely, yeah.
It was so frequent that was like, it was not even relevant here to blame women.
I don't think you can battle that on the algorithm. I think that stuff is so clickable and so that rabbit hole.
Won't go anywhere.
Like I remember when we were working on John Wick, I had to Google a lot. I had to search. I ended up like doing private tabs and stuff because I had to search a lot for like footage of guns being shot. Because for the reference, like we were looking at like how the animation and stuff of guns being shot, and you look at 2 videos of a gun range, and you start getting suggestions that are astonishingly.
It happens fast.
That pipeline, all it takes is a teenage boy who's a bit angry because the girl he likes won't talk to him, who clicks on a video for dating advice, and 2 videos later they're seeing
it sells. Yeah, it happens very, very quickly. It's don't consume content that makes you mad. That's the biggest thing. It's like if it makes you mad, they're profiting off of that, and it's just bad for your heart, like literally your heart health. It's just bad for you. Just get out of there. And I definitely wish people would do that more often as well. Otherwise, I don't know. We need solutions, I think, to the communication problem. But I
think that's the solution. I think
definitely one of them.
Don't watch stuff that makes you angry.
Yeah, if you feel yourself getting angry, literally click away.
If there are many problems in this world that will affect you directly and the people you care about directly, worry about those issues, work on those issues, but don't get if someone who tells you they know all the answers or is trying to make you angry is definitely profiting off you currently, so don't let them.
It's so easy to do.
Alrighty,
on that note, I'm Alanah Pearce. I'm a video game writer. That's Mike Bithell. He's a video game director. This is Play, Watch, Listen. We are not recording next week, or at least I'm not. You and Austin maybe can.
Won't be.
Probably not.
me and Austin trying to schedule a call. It won't happen.
Yeah, good luck. Have fun with that.
Good luck with that. Yeah, that's definitely.
We'll see you guys not next week, the week after. Maybe, hopefully, probably.